Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. I am your host, Maryland Attorney Elsa W. Smith, and I'm the owner of the law offices of Elsa W. Smith, where our mission is to empower women through estate planning. I am just thrilled with the guests that I'm going to be able to share with you today. But before then, I just want to share that, there are plenty of video blogs and podcasts where you'll hear that finance and fitness are related and they play an instrumental role in bringing, stability to your life. And that's why investing in your fitness, as we read, pays off both in your physical as well as financial well-being, especially in the long term. It's also pretty well known that stress is a key driver of breakdowns in your health, and finances can be one of the biggest stressors that you face, but they don't have to be. I'm excited to bring you another phenomenal woman making an impact in this area and in our community. Today, we're going to be chatting with Ariana Stowe, and let me share a little bit about her. She is an entrepreneur, founder, and the CEO of Ariana Stowe Fitness. And she runs a successful financial planning practice in Washington, D.C. She's driven by impact. She takes pride in showing Black women what's possible with accountability, discipline, and a strategic plan in place for success. Prior to starting her business in 2015, Ariana was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to teach English in Brazil and is fluent in Portuguese. In 2020, Ariana was featured in Strong Fitness magazine as a woman to watch for her extraordinary commitment to transforming the lives of women in her community and around the world. And with that, please welcome Ariana Stowe. Hi, Ariana. How are you?
Hi, Elsa. I'm so excited. How are you?
Fabulous. I've been looking forward to this interview, and we're just gonna have fun. It's like two girls chilling, having mimosas. That's the vibe.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the vibe of this interview. So listen, let's jump right into it. Tell us, if you would please, about your personal story, because it's so fascinating. You shared it with me on show prep, in show prep, and I'd love for you to share that with the audience.
Yeah, so I like to start my story kind of at the beginning because I feel like my life has come completely full circle. And by that, I mean, and I don't even know if I shared this with you, Elsa, but I was born premature at 26 weeks.
No, you didn't tell
And
me.
so after I was born, I stayed in the hospital for about 60 days. And I think when I really think about that story and the fact that I was born 2 pounds, 6 ounces, I believe that my life is a miracle. I believe that it is a gift and that I have to do something with that gift. And I've kind of always felt that at different points of my life. And so way back when I was in middle school, I read To Kill a Mockingbird and I was like, I gotta be an attorney. Like, I gotta be a lawyer. I'm gonna be the female version of Atticus Finch. I'm gonna fight for the people and be the voice for the voiceless. And so that was my path. And so I literally did every internship you can imagine in law. I was locked in pre-law, in college, this whole thing. And then I graduated from college, started working at a law firm, and realized at 22 years old, maybe this wasn't quite it for me. Like maybe not yet, maybe down the line, but not at that moment. And so as I was going through that, of course, right, you kind of have to grieve the dream that you thought you were going to have. And I decided to take on a new challenge and opportunity and apply to a program that I had actually already failed once getting in. And so I can definitely speak to anyone who can relate about overcoming failure and challenges. And so I applied a second time, got into the program, which is the Fulbright program, and then embarked on the adventure of a lifetime and moved to Brazil for a year to teach English at a university in a country where I did not know the language. I mean, it was excited. I never forget how excited I was because it felt like I don't really know what's next. And I'm actually at peace with that because up until that point in my life, everything had been strategically planned out. You know, I'll get into a little bit of my fitness story as well. I grew up an athlete playing basketball for many, many years and played in college as well. But that was very much my parents' dream and what they wanted. And this was finally my chance to pursue something that I wanted at such a young age. So I was really excited, really excited. Now, what happened while I was in Brazil? It was amazing. Had the time of my life, made a lot of impact. I started a gospel choir while I was there because I wanted to introduce English language in the form of music, and to see Brazilian students singing Kurt Franklin, like y'all can just only imagine. I mean, it was really, really amazing. But I experienced time freedom too. And I only worked about 25 hours a week as a teacher, and literally the rest of the time was mine. And I had never really experienced that in my life at that point. And so I said, okay, I know I can't take every piece of Brazil back with me. I mean, I was ready to just overstay my visa and never come back. I was just like, this is it for me. Like this is it for me, mom and dad. And they were not too excited about that. And so I came back and I said, okay, let me at least investigate what it would look like to live a life on my terms and not have to have it be so tied into work and a career and things like that. And so I pivoted a little bit, and I was at I went through a temp agency and worked at the Smithsonian, which then led me to working for a nonprofit. And I started running a STEM program, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in Baltimore City. I worked with inner city Baltimore youth and was able to get into engineering programs at Apple in California, travel with them, competitions, very fulfilling work. Really, truly one of the highlights of my life outside of Brazil, but I still wasn't fulfilled yet. I didn't have that inner fulfillment, even though I was doing fulfilling work. Like those aren't always the same thing. And so then I decided to step out on faith, and I started my first business. I left corporate in 2018, and then January 1 every year is my business anniversary, which is a big deal for business owners. And that's when I launched Ariana Stowe Fitness. Now, Ariana Stowe Fitness was already in the making, and this is an important piece, for about 4 to 5 years at that point, because I had been sharing my journey, my transformation. I had already started working with clients because I started as a Beachbody coach, and like people knew me for fitness. So I was like, this is an easy pivot. I'm now taking the knowledge that I had in one area and I'm just applying it into my own brand. This is going to be amazing. And it was, until the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, I had been training clients in person and online. I pivoted completely online, obviously, with everything going on, and realized pivoting online gave me my time back again. And remember, the time freedom was the piece that I had enjoyed the most living in Brazil that I'm still trying to make happen in my own life, right? And
Let me, if I would, forgive me, but that pivoting is important, and I don't want to rush through that because there are a lot of people, particularly women, who are watching right now, who are still pivoting.
Ooh.
You know, like 2 years into this thing, we're still pivoting. We're still, managing. So just lie in that for just a second and tell us how that was for you, how you had to make that change when things were shutting down and we just had to reconfigure how we do business.
Right. So remember when I said you sometimes have to grieve the loss of the dream that you thought you were going to have?
I love that statement.
Most of 2020 was that for me because I could no longer have a business that had a lot of streams coming in. I'm training in person. I got fitness clothes. I got this. I got that. I had to really narrow in and focus on where the need was at that time, which meant my goal list of serving 1,000 women and making this income and everything completely had to adjust and change. And so I showed up in what was needed for the market and made peace with what I had to do in that moment, and then realized that I didn't lose anything when I did that. And once that kind of came full circle in 2021, I was like, okay, this is now my new identity that I can now associate with, because it's not about how I serve the market. It's about ultimately what makes me happy in the business that I'm running. And so for anyone listening to this that is struggling with a pivot, especially if it's like in another direction, which I eventually went into, than what people are even known you for up until this point, if it brings you happiness and joy, it's worth pursuing.
I love that. What a statement. What a message. So I guess, and this goes right into, well, I was going to ask you another question before this, but your why. What is your
Mm.
why?
Yeah, my why is truly rooted in the fact on a personal level. Like I mentioned earlier, I've got to do something with my life, with this gift of my life. And I always saw myself leading a life of impact. Like wanting to become a lawyer, the root of that was wanting to make and leave an impact on this world. And so
Mhm.
the fact that I'm now doing it in my own brand, on my way and on my own terms is still very much feeding into that. And, simply speaking, I'm like, if I'm not that person, who else is going to be that? Like, my dad actually works in human rights. And so he like has ingrained into myself and my brother and my sister this idea of like leaving impact and helping people the way that things were done in the civil rights movement. And I always thought like, who are the people that are going to be those people in present time? And what are going to be those new struggles? And so I kind of see myself carving out my own lane in health and wealth as being that person that leads the impact, but specifically in the lives of other women, because I'm like, who is going to speak up and be that voice for Black women if we don't do it for each other?
I love that. Tell us, okay, so you have Ariana Stowe Fitness, but
Yes.
you also are trained in, in the finance world. Tell us a little bit about, credentials that you have and what you do in that sphere.
Yep. So last year, about a year ago, I decided to pivot slightly because my time had opened up when I transitioned my business online and wanted to add in essentially another stream of income very selfishly for myself. So, for anyone listening and thinking about whether or not they should take action and add more income to their pocket, the answer is unequivocally yes, because you've got to save yourself. Right. And so, what was very interesting is my financial advisor reached out to me, said that they were hiring in the DC office. I decided to say yes and take action purely based on the fact that if you guys can teach me everything that I need to know, I can get the licenses that I need, all of those things, then I'll be good to go as long as I know that there's a mission that I'm working behind. And their
Right.
mission is really putting $50 billion in the hands of Black and Brown families of
Mm,
generational wealth over the next decades, right? And so being a part of that, I said I can definitely get behind that mission. And so went through the process to initially get like insurance license just so that I could be able to serve in that market, and then
right.
working towards the investments license. And I have basically a year to get all of that in. And it has been crazy, but it has been such an amazing ride. And I'm learning so much in that process. But at an integral level, what I came into was just experience as a business owner. What are things that I did early on? And what did I wish that I knew when I first started as a business owner that I now know now that I'm gaining knowledge in this new area of expertise? But really, life has taught me everything up to this point. And what the really unique perspective that I bring, Elsa, right, is this idea of like the consistency and discipline, right?
Right.
Someone really wise told me once, and it has always lived in my head rent free. If you know how to take care of your health and your wealth and your body and have discipline and consistency, there's no reason why you shouldn't be wealthy.
I'm
And
going
I
to stop you because we're going to talk about that and do a deeper dive into that in just a minute, young lady. But I want to step back for a second and ask, why is wealth important? I mean, people
mm,
will be like, well, yeah, sure, of course it is, but why?
but
And
why?
you have an interesting take on that.
So women watching this, okay, listen to me when I share these three things. There's three things that we don't often think about and why women in particular need to be wealthy. Number one, we make 82 cents to the man's dollar. We're already coming into the wealth conversation behind. So any opportunity that you have to get ahead, increase your salary 20% if you go from one job to the next, all of it matters because we're already short, right? The second thing is women live longer than men do, which means your retirement outlook is longer than maybe your partner or spouses, right? Because you're going to be alive longer until your late 90s, where someone else might not have that opportunity. You need to have more wealth to sustain a lifestyle for much longer, right? And then the third thing is, Elsa, women are usually caregivers, right? We're usually taking in family, loved ones, a person that's not even your family, but you call them auntie, right? We're usually taking them in variety of different ways that have not only emotional impacts, right, but also financial impacts. And those emotional impacts too, Elsa, can sometimes show up in the way that we show up in our jobs. So then now we're not showing up fully in work because we're taking on the burdens and responsibilities of others that are also affecting our pockets. It's just a lot, right? And so again, any opportunity that you have to increase your wealth, acquire more wealth, protect your money, it matters more than you can ever realize because of those three areas that I described.
So those are really like the three reasons that
Oh,
women
yeah.
need to be wealthy. And it's
Absolutely.
not just amassing, bags and shoes and, all,
No,
all kinds of stuff.
no,
There are
which
more important reasons to be wealthy.
more important reasons that aren't always apparent in real time, right? And that's why I like to key in on those, because you're not thinking about the person you might have to take care of and how that's going to affect your wealth down the line,
Ooh.
because you might be more concerned with what you're able to acquire today in real time with the money that you have. But sometimes we got to like zoom out. And that's really what I love about the planning process, is that it allows people to pause and zoom out and think down the line of things that they just might want to have funds set aside for just in case, right?
Yeah,
Just in
that's
case they were-
so that's so important because there are many of us, like I'm 52 and I share that willingly. But many folks in my age demographic, we are, if we're not, taking care of kids, we may be taking care of parents. So
Right.
we're like, that's what they call that sandwich generation.
Mm,
And things happen, and you may have had your nice little plan, your 20-year plan, mapped out, and then something happens, an illness or some other tragedy that causes you to, yes, we're overusing the word here, pivot again.
mhm.
And now all of a sudden you've got to tap into resources
Yep.
that you had planned just for you, and traveling the world and visiting 50 countries, before you're 90. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now I've got a loved one to take care of, or, I have a child, or I have multiple children. And now what?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. 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 And, I'm a firm believer that we don't have to wait and be so reactionary to things. If
Mm,
there's some level of a semblance of a plan, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out, but at least having the conversation, right, of what we would do if X, Y, and Z came to pass. How would we even recover? How would we be prepared to handle that? So it's interesting to hear you share some of the things that are happening in that sandwich generation that inevitably may or may not come for all of us at some point, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Talk to us about how health plays into acquiring wealth.
Ooh, so when it comes to health playing into acquiring wealth, I think the one thing to consider and to think about is how the lack of proper health hurts your pockets, right?
Mm,
And so if you're great at managing money, you're great at saving, you have a certain level of discipline and execution that's already built in. Matter of fact, Elsa, we all do, right? We wake up, we go to work, we
right.
feed ourselves. Like there's things that we do that we don't have to think about. And so it's often bewildering why health becomes the thing that feels so unattainable, right?
Mm,
But the reality is it's just a reframe of mindset, right? And how you prioritize your health coming into it, because it's so heartbreaking when someone comes to me wanting to get an insurance, something in place to set aside, which very much is connected to your health. And there's times I have to have hard conversations where it's like, hey, if you had come to me 20 years sooner when your health was better before these things happened, you would have been insurable. But now I don't know if that's the case. And in some cases, it flat out isn't. right? And so again, now that's something that's removed from being an option for your future legacy planning, right? That you can't have because your health isn't as strong as it was years prior, right?
And can we speak directly to like what we see? Let's call out diabetes, let's
Right.
call out heart disease,
Yep.
all the things, and more that plague folks in our communities. Just calling those things out and
All of those things are
yeah.
like, I mean, a lot of like, of course, autoimmune related conditions and things like that, which
Yeah.
aren't always directly correlated, can come up. But we
Mhm.
see things like diabetes coming up as being a health issue, any heart related conditions, everything that you talked about. And so I want to throw in a little health expertise on this piece, right? Because one thing that you can get measured, which will definitely help prevent some of these things down the line potentially, is checking in to find out what your visceral fat is, right?
Ooh.
And what that number is. And that is the fat that lies around your organs, which typically also is the belly fat, right? Now, outside of healthy eating and dieting, right? The one thing that also contributes to weight gain in the midsection is stress.
I
Is
feel
stress.
seen.
It's stress. It's stress. Okay. And why? Cortisol. When your cortisol spikes up and down, which is also known as your fight or flight hormone, right?
Mhm.
Every time it sends you into that flight mode where you're really, really anxious, it starts to hold on to things to make you feel safe again, right? To bring you back down.
Oh,
It can
okay.
also cause cravings. There's so many things. Like I encourage you all to do your own research and look up cortisol levels and to have them checked out so that you can understand where you're at on that spectrum to start incorporating habits to lower that. You
Mm.
do that in combination with, what everyone knows how to do, eat a healthier whole food-based diet, get us a daily movement, which I'm going to talk about in a second. That
Mhm.
will definitely help to see some impact in lowering that visceral fat. The less fat around your organs, the less stress that your body is taking on. We don't have as many issues down the line.
Talk to us, and I'm sure you have suggestions for this too, but what, for busy professionals like myself, I mean, talk
Mhm.
to it. And those who are watching, hi ladies, I see you. Talk to us about just little things at least that we can start doing because before we have the conversation with the doctor and says,
Yes.
Miss So and so, it's either exercise or we're putting you on medications. So
Ooh, what can
before
we
we
do?
get there, tell us what we
Mhm.
can do.
So the first thing that you want to do before you get there is kind of where our conversation started at, and that is to get a clear idea of what your why is. And I call it, when I take my clients through, the why that makes you cry. There
Mm,
has to be an emotional reason behind your transformation. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it. It
mhm.
can't be a vacation in 30 days or a wedding at the end of the year. It's got to be a lot deeper than that because that's what's going to remind you of why you're doing it on the days where you don't, right? And so that is where I would start, number one. Number two, you have to get realistic with your lifestyle. So if you're like, and I think a lot of people go that 0 to 100 method and then they fall off the wagon because it's not a fit for their lifestyle because they can't stick with it. What's that happy medium, right? If you know you got 30 minutes a day at 6 a.m., 3 times a week, that's your truth. That's where you start. Because ultimately, what you enjoy and what's realistic to your lifestyle is what you're going to be consistent to. And so you don't have to join the Orange Theory or do 1,000 burpees or whatever it is that you feel like you need to do. I tell my clients this all the time. Again, it's putting in the reps consistently over time that's going to get you to the end result, regardless if it takes you 3 months or 6 months. But get realistic on what that needs to look like, right? So then that way, it's like I'm bought into this routine because it works for me. It works for Elsa. It works for Ariana. What works for Ariana right now is I love to run. The weather is breaking. I will get out and run. I just ran a 10K a couple weeks ago. That's my jam, right? I still lift weights and things like that, but when the weather is warm in the DC area, I'm getting outside and I'm running. I'm that Black girl running down the street and you like, is she running for someone? Like, is there something going on right now? I'm that girl. I'm that girl because that's what I like and enjoy doing, right? So again, After you get a deeper why, right? A why that makes you cry, establish a routine that works and fits well for your lifestyle.
Mhm.
Then when it comes to the food, right? Now, let me ask you something. I know this is my interview, but if you had to pick food or exercise, what is your greatest vice? Like, what is the thing that you feel is the hardest to overcome in your journey over the years?
Food or exercise? It
Mhm.
would be exercise. That's like the
That's the hard part.
that's the hard
Okay.
part. Yeah. Mhm.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And so with exercise, right? So I'll talk about that, then I'll go into the food. After you establish the routine that works well for you,
Mhm.
really simply put, things to keep in mind is that every 10 years, you lose 10% roughly of your muscle mass. And
Mm.
so strength training is going to be your best friend because strength training builds the muscles that help to break through long term the body fat, right? Like you got to have that combination of the ratio between the body fat and your muscular development. And also, as your muscles essentially lose that mass over time, it's going to change your body composition as well. So for
Mm.
the women listening, they're like, how do I get tight and toned, etc. It's the muscle mass. And so that you have to do strength training. But y'all, at a minimum, twice a week. It doesn't have to be 5 days, twice a week, throw in some cardio, you're gonna be okay. Now, during the pandemic, what happened? We all started sitting on our behinds and we probably gained some weight, right? I went through it. Like
Yeah.
it's a very normalized thing that happened. But the real truth behind it is that we stopped being more active in our daily activities, whether
Yeah.
that was getting in the car and commuting, walking down the street to grab a lunch, all of those little, instances of movement, right, were
Absolutely.
really increasing our metabolism. And so outside of what I just shared, right, just throw in some daily movement, right? Whether that is getting up every hour and walking around the house, going for walks outside 3 times a week, anything that you can do to add more movement throughout your day is going to rev up that metabolism to really support the additional physical activity that you're doing outside of that.
I
Does that
love
make
that.
sense?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, totally. Because there's such an intersection here between health and finance, everybody listening, yes, I'm jumping back and forth, but because, everything is really interrelated. Let me, as we are approaching the top of the hour, I want to ask you, how do you deal with women who come to you for financial help, financial advice, that have challenging money stories?
Mm. Yeah, I think when I have challenging money stories with clients, the first thing that I do is I let them share their truth fully and completely because I might be only one of two or a very small amount of people that they have ever shared that with, right? And before that, I tell them that not only is it a confidential conversation, right? This is a space where it is safe to be vulnerable and honest about your challenges. One of the questions that I typically ask in these meetings is, what is something that you saw growing up financially that either your family or environment, like whatever happened around you, that you don't want to do going forward? And that typically sparks up quite a unpacking of things that we're seeing. And then I transition into the positive, right? I say, now that you've gotten that all out, what do you want to do going forward that's different? Right. And I think helping people to see that their challenges and their previous state doesn't have to be their story going forward allows them to really step into that new reality. Because a lot of times with health and wealth, right, our stories that we grew up with don't have to be the end result. But because there's a subconscious belief that where we're trying to get to is too far away, that is where the conflict is created because we see where we're trying to go, but we remember because for some of us, it wasn't that long ago where we came from and it seems really far apart. Right. But the caveat, like what's the bridge between where you were and where you're going? It is in taking that consistent action and having that belief system in place backed with a plan. And the plan is what creates the possibility of the fact that where you're going. And so it's like, you've shared all this stuff. You told me where you're trying to go. Do you still feel like you're not going to get there if we take X, Y, and Z steps? Does it feel like this conversation today is getting you closer to where you're trying to go? And 100% of the time, everyone says yes.
I so appreciate that you allow women, first of all, that you create that safe space,
Mhm.
because, myself included. I mean, people think, oh, yeah, she just was born with a silver spoon or she went to private schools all her life. Like, negative on both counts. I grew up in the inner city and was raised by working class parents,
Wow.
so yeah, I mean, there, and things were hard. And that's a lot of what I saw growing up. I didn't have that discussion with my parents that some people in, wealthier situations have, when their kids, are like 18 or 19, like, oh, so I want you to sit down and talk with my financial advisor now that you're entering the workforce. You know what? That didn't happen.
Didn't
Yeah,
happen.
you know what I was doing? I was in college and thinking straight, about what I was going to do after college, and I ended up going straight into law school, with a combination of lots of scholarships, working my butt off, and loans.
Right.
Okay, because I didn't have a trust fund that I could, depend on. So that's my story.
Mm-hmm.
So in starting a business, in trying to create wealth, that's something that those are the images that that I bring to my now. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that, and I really wanted you to touch on that because I know there are a whole lot of other women like me
Yep.
who, didn't just come out of the womb with a Birkin bag, right?
Right.
We had to
Right.
work. We had to work
And are
hard.
still working your tails off, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back, like, it's so interesting that you share that, Elsa, because that goes back to support the 3 reasons why you got to keep your money, right? Because you didn't come this far to only come this far just to have a situation come up that was either unplanned or unexpected. Like, you're worth so much more than that because of your story. In spite of the odds, you're here standing, right? And so it's just really important that women see their power, right? And see what they're really capable of doing. And the fact that everything that we're sharing today is all interconnected and making that happen.
Yeah. Tell us, if you would, you have a really cool and unique tagline. Would you share what that is?
Okay, so y'all ready? I snatch waistlines and bank accounts of high achieving women who have discipline with business, but not with fitness or personal finance.
Ooh, ooh, let that breathe. Let that breathe. Oh my goodness.
And that's what I do. That's what I do. That's it. That's it. Because you either need one or the other, and sometimes you need both. And that's exactly what I'm here to do.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
Listen, how can we support you on social media? I'm going to put your information on the screen, but tell us how we can reach you.
Yep. So if you have any needs related to health and fitness, I actually have a fitness app called Ariana Stowe Fitness. Actually, it's called, and the group called the Snatch Society, that you can join. You can find details about that at www.arianastowefitness.com, as well as follow me on Instagram, and I'm at Ariana Stowe if you have fitness related needs. If you have needs related to financial planning for you and your family, the website is arianastowe.nm.com. And whatever needs that you have, you're not even sure where to start, you can just give me a call on my number, 202-221-7726. And I'm Ariana Stowe on LinkedIn, Facebook, all social media platforms, and also Twitter. So wherever you are, I'm probably there too. And please feel free to reach out. I would love to just be a resource, add guidance, or at least point you in the right direction if I'm not that person.
Thank you so much, Ariana. To say that it's been fun it's an understatement. This is so important for a number of reasons. I created this platform because I like showcasing women, and women of color is even a plus, that are inhabiting spaces that we normally don't,
Ooh,
where representation matters.
yes.
So if I can use my platform to do that, then by God, that's what I'm going to do. And thank you so much for sharing your story, being vulnerable,
Yeah.
sharing your expertise, and empowering women, which is what my tagline is: empowering women through estate planning. I want to bring resources and showcase women that are out there making an impact, and changing lives, one person, one woman at a time. So I have to say thank you so much for being so gracious with your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's really, really been a pleasure. Everyone, Ariana Stowe, you already know. I'm going to put her information one last time on the screen on how to reach her. She's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Like, trust me, I've talked to her on show prep, and she's phenomenal. So get in touch with her. She's prompted me. She's giving me that little nudge to get myself moving on the health and fitness realm. So I'll certainly be doing that. Ariana, thank you so much. And
You're
I will
welcome.
talk to you in a few minutes. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Everyone, wasn't she phenomenal? I told you she would be. I hope that you've gotten a lot from this episode and realized that there is an intersection between health and wealth. And, Ariana is an example of a professional that can help us, kind of do a bit of both and meet our goals. And what we do at the law offices of Elsa W. Smith, we're an estate planning firm. We help you get from A to Z in your legacy planning. So if you have questions about wills, advance directives, trust, all the things, I want you to give us a call at 410-995-7719. You've seen the information scroll at the bottom of the screen. I want to thank you again for joining us for this episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. It's always a pleasure to bring you quality content and phenomenal guests. Again, my name is Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.